Welcome to We Digress with Joy and Jess. Join hosts and longtime friends Joy Simpson and Jess Perry as they tackle the stuff of life the only way they know how, with honesty, faith, and humor. This is We Digress with Joy and Jess. Hey everyone, welcome to We Digress with Joy and Jess. I am Jess.
And that would make me Joy.
These intros get weird and weird. I know, you can tell we're recording earlier than normal, and neither one of us are particularly awake. We're like awake-ish. I am brought to you by Starbucks this morning with an ad shot. Oh man, let me tell you that today is like a crazy day. It's been a crazy week.
It's been a crazy couple of weeks, actually. I mean, looking at what all you have going on and the remodeling
you've got going on,
moving in.
We're moving on from the apartment.
You're moving on too. So yeah, it's been a lot. And then I feel like, we only worked 4 days this week because we're recording this on Veterans Day.
Yes. Which we love our veterans. Thank you guys.
We absolutely love our veterans. We thank you. We appreciate you for everything that you do for this country. I definitely want to say that. But it also, I'm not going to deny that it helps not have to go to work after it's been a week. Okay.
Right.
Like the kids have been on like this weird behavior, sugar high Halloween thing since Halloween last week.
Well, okay. So it's Halloween. Plus it's been raining out there. Like that's just a recipe for insanity.
Yeah. So they're, kids and being indoors, they're like allergic to it. You would think because most of them do video games and don't always play outside. But I guess at school, they're used to being outside and playing. Yeah. And so the fall, winter months, even though California is generally like not like major weather, but it is difficult because it starts getting colder earlier. It starts getting dark later. And so most of my kids are with us until 6 o'clock in the evening.
Oh, it's dark then.
So this was the first week. So it was a week after Thanksgiving. Jesus help me. The week after Halloween. Stormed 2 days, especially on Tuesday. Terrible. Plus, it was the first week of daylight savings. And so I have like kids like freaking out, like my mom forgot me. It's only 5, but
right. They haven't figured out
that dynamic. So it was a short week for us because of Veterans Day.
But thank God it was.
Very long week. And then next week is our last week before Thanksgiving break. So.
Yikes. Yeah. So it's a lot.
Yeah, it kind of is. And, my boss, on the rainy days, my boss was gone. So I was in charge on Monday and Tuesday. So I had to deal with staff because they have behavior too. Some of the other teachers, they have behavior.
Keeping it so real.
Here's the thing. And we're going to get into this in more so of a music ministry world. But I have come against a lot of this just lately, men who just can't deal with a female in authority or a female, telling them what to do. And there is a male staff who is struggling with that because he's a macho. Granted, I love a man that likes to protect and take care and all of that. But there's a time and place. And when I'm trying to set order and I'm trying to tell you what to do, you getting your feelings hurt because you can't take charge and help me does not help me, sir. Like it doesn't. So we'll get a little more into that, but just know. And I even have a student. I have literally a 9-year-old student who always flips out in my class and the other female teacher's class because he does not deal well with women in authority. Already, he's 9. There was a questionnaire that was asked because of his behavior, and we're trying to figure some things out with his doctor and between our staff, the main school staff and things like that. So one of the questions that they asked him was, who is it that you respect? And he said his dad, his mom, and my supervisor. And like one other man. And it said, why did you respect these particular people? For his mother, it said, because I have to. He's 9.
That's
so
learned
I am
behavior.
With dudes and I can't deal because you're a chick. And then it always makes, especially in the African American community, Black women have like a whole different level of stigma.
Yeah.
So like I'm a woman and then I'm a Black woman. Like it's a whole like thing. And it's always like, oh, well, you were being aggressive when I was literally just having a conversation and talking in my tone. You know, I had to explain to one of the staff, I'm like, you may not like my tone. I don't teach the way other teachers teach. I don't do gentle teaching, like gentle parenting. And we can get into a whole thing about gentle parenting.
I have thoughts.
But yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. I've seen lots of different things, but there is a thing as gentle teaching now because teachers are afraid to get canceled.
Oh, yeah.
Teachers are afraid to go viral for the wrong reason. And so we have kind of let behavior just be out there because we want to, okay, Cody, it's okay. That's fine that you threw a pencil at Chantel's head, but I don't do that. And I had a whole moment with my 4th and 5th graders yesterday during theater. I said, look, at the end of the day, I'm not on that stage. It's you. So if you want an okay show, that's fine. That's up to you. But don't make me a part of it because you're not doing what you're supposed to do. I'm not expecting you to be professionals. I'm not expecting you to be perfect, but I am expecting you to be respectful. And you guys are not respecting my time today. And it's not like I did anything major, but my tone was very strong. And that was one of the things that this particular male teacher like complained to my supervisor about me. First of all, at the end of the day, whether my boss is there or not, I'm still the assistant director. So I'm still your boss, even when he's there. So yeah, men are pissing me off this week.
Let me say it louder for everyone in the back. A strong man, a true, genuine man is not threatened by a strong woman.
That is so true.
And let me tell you something. I am, by every account, a very strong female. And find you a man who is not threatened by that and who appreciates that and understands how awesome it is. And shout out to John Perry. I love you, boo.
And because we've been women in ministry for so long.
Oh yeah.
You know, I started directing choirs and leading worship before I had any type of degree or even thought about a call of ministry on my life. It was a skill that I just thought I had because my parents both did it. So at that time, I just thought it was just something
it's inherited.
Naturally. It was inherited. And though it was inherited through also through the power of God and through the gifts and the talents that he has given us. And so once I connected all of that, you know, I've been doing it for so long now, pandemic wise. You know, before I haven't really done so. Right now I'm working with a women's choir for a particular church, getting them ready for Women's Day. Their pastor called a few weeks ago, and I'm gonna tell you, I honestly felt like we need way more rehearsals. We have one more, and I'm a little on the stressed outside on the inside. Not only on the inside, look at my face. I'm stressed on the outside too. And it's not because the women aren't doing a good job. They are, but most of them haven't sang since 2020.
It's
maybe a little bit before.
Everyone's out of practice.
And some of them, I call them the silver saints. Some of them are much older. And you know how Women's Day and women's choirs go. It's volunteer. It's the women who want to sign up and be a part of that day. And that's amazing. I've been working with women's choirs, whatever, but I particularly have worked with women's choirs throughout a lot of ministry time. And so I know, but they are having a little harder time retaining not necessarily the words, but retaining the parts because it's muscle
memory.
You
had to practice.
It's not something, you know, and because I was not told until the day of the first rehearsal that the rehearsal was only an hour.
Oh.
Whereas most rehearsals, I'm used to 1.5 to 2 hours for something like this when it's a special thing and you only have 3 rehearsals. So that's interesting. And so Jessica and I have like worked with ministry, which means we have worked with a lot of men in ministry, who, for lack of a better word, don't always trust our authority. And, I'm trying to be nice here. They don't do well. You know, I've worked with a lot of men because most bands in church are men. I mean, you have some women, but less than you have you
Oh,
had
absolutely.
Back in the day when I was younger, like one of the drummers for one of the major churches out here was a female, and she was like one of the first like you ever really saw, and she was like
girl drummers,
bad.
man.
Like
I love girl drummers.
She's amazing, you know, and so it's I grew up seeing that, but I also grew up seeing, you know, and experiencing being ignored when I say do something because, oh, I know better because I'm the musician. And it may be a little different for Jess because she's an actual musician. Like she plays instruments. I don't play instruments. I'm just a vocal person. I can tinker at a piano enough to teach parts. And if it was up to my piano teacher from college, I would have never made it through the music program. So, shout out to Dr. Terry. I made it. Anyway, that's another story for another day. Gosh. No, he literally told me on graduation, and I think I shared this before. He told me on graduation, like, he was proud, but he totally was just like, I really didn't think you were going to make it through this program. And it was a little biased because I came from where ministry, we didn't always go to school for it. We just did it.
Right.
Whether it's music, whether it was the call of preaching, whether it was whatever, a lot of us we didn't necessarily, I mean, we had internal, Bible colleges in like our ministries, but we didn't go to Bible college. We didn't go to seminary necessarily. We didn't go. I always tell people a lot of what I learned about teaching music and doing music was not necessarily what I learned at school, but it was the people I was around and the experiences that I had, because a lot of what I did in college, I was already doing at home church, if that makes any sense. So, that was a issue, I think, for that particular professor, because I didn't have the technical stuff down yet. And he felt at my age and at, you know, coming into a program that is designed for music and musicians and worship leaders and things like that, that I didn't have the technical skill. I gained a lot of the technical skill, but the genuine, and not to toot my own horn at all, but the genuine regular raw skill I had already had because I had been literally doing it since I was a teenager. So,
which is interesting to me because, like, you were not an instrument major, you were a vocal major. And like, I think of who was in our like class that we studied with. And I think there were only 2 of us that had instrument backgrounds. Me and Jeff, I think, were the only 2 that had an instrument background to speak of anything. And I wasn't even a piano major. I was a vocal major, but I had at that point, you know, 12 years of piano lessons. So I was decent. So it's interesting to me that he would consider it a knock that you didn't have like piano or instrument skills or technical skill when no one did, except for maybe like a few of us, like a very small handful of us.
Super hard on me.
He was. And you know what?
And theory and all of that. And I did learn it. I got it. You know, it was harder for me, but I did it. But I don't do math. And a lot of theory is math. And I was like,
it is.
And I read music slightly at the time because I went to a music school, but reading music was not required to do what we did. I did it and planked through because piano players in our different classes like would help me through. So that was like, I don't know, it frustrated him that I wasn't like an stellar like sight reader at the time. I mean, I still, some days I'll be like, oh, okay, but I got it. I can do it. I know what key we're in. I know what the notes are. But yeah, he was really hard on me. And then, you know, and to me, compared to, considering what we're talking about, I don't know if it was a man thing or if it was you know, a lot of what I shared about what I had already done, he was like, well, you shouldn't be doing that because blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, who says that I'm not qualified to do what I was doing because I don't read music? He's like, and you're 19, it's going to be a lot harder for you than everybody else because everybody else is coming in at a curve that you don't have, basically, is what he told me. And this was in my piano lessons. I was in beginner piano, you guys. Like, he was talking to me like I was I should have been, what's that dude who used to wear all the jewels and the piano player? What's his name? Yes.
My mom met him when she was little.
I can see your mom actually being happy about that.
Oh, well,
Liberace seems like he was a cool dude.
Liberace was friends with my mom's aunt.
That is fascinating, actually.
So sidebar. My family.
Total digression moment.
My family, my mom's dad's family. So my grandfather on my mom's side of the family, that is the Syrian Lebanese side of the family. Mm-hmm. And his older sister Adele and her husband lived in Vegas, as did actually all the family eventually ended up in Vegas by some way, except for my grandfather and my grandmother. So everybody lives in Vegas. So I grew up in Vegas a majority of my younger life because we were just there visiting family.
Yeah.
Well, but my Aunt Adele was very well connected, like super well connected. And this was back in the 50s with the mob. My uncle Esper was a stage manager at the Desert Inn, knew the Rat Pack, like knew all those guys. He has a book. If you guys are listening, I'm going to pump this book.
The stories he could tell.
Oh, and they're amazing. I will try to put this in the show notes. But he wrote a memoir about his time in Las Vegas. It's available on Amazon. Unfortunately, need to read this book. I don't have the title of the book right now because it's in storage and I can't quite recall what it was. But his wife was a dancer with the Lido de Paris at the Stardust Hotel. Like they were very well connected. Anyways, Liberace would come and have dinner. Liberace would come and have dinner at my Aunt Adele's house. And when my mom was a little girl, everybody would be there. My aunt would have come from a show, so she was in full dancer makeup. All of this explains my mom's deep love for like intense makeup and jewelry and all this stuff because she grew up with it. And like this glamorous.
That just explains your mom to me in a whole different light. And I have literally known Mama Karen for 20 something years.
Yeah.
Like she was the first person I knew that was getting lash extensions when we were 19, 20.
Yeah.
Well, before when I met her, I was 18. So
I used to have to drive her because the lash glue was not good and it would like seep into her eyes and she couldn't open her eyes for an hour, but she was getting lashes. Yeah.
And this was before it was like available everywhere. Like you had to go to a specific place. And I remember it was like a little further from, I was going to say it was further from where you live because you lived in your Belinda at the time. And so anyway, total digression, but that explains a lot about Mama Karen.
It does. Anyways, all that to say, I think that I'm going to say two things. First off, and this is not an excuse. It's just by way of, I think, an explanation. Rick was from I think Rick's heart was in the right place. I think he was coming to it as a piano instructor, and he's thinking of piano as preeminent because piano, when you play piano and when you teach piano, it is kind of ingrained in you that is like the foundation of everything for music.
Right.
And so I think if he had guitar students in there, he would have said the exact same thing, only because as a piano player, you're conditioned to be like classical piano is the only way to learn and teach piano.
Right. Right.
But I also think that he had no understanding or framework really of how different traditions arrive at a same place. So like you were coming out of your tradition and like the culture of your church and all this kind of stuff, which has a different method of training and raising up musicians and stuff. And for him, that's so foreign because it's not how you take lessons when you're 5 and then you get up and do that. Like for you and me, like I fit so much more his preconceived idea of what that mold would be. And yet, ironically, I never once had him as an instructor.
Right. Oh, wow. Really?
I had him in theory 1, but I never had
theory
him for
1. Yeah, because we were in the same theory class, theory 1 class. And again, this still goes with what we're building to the whole female musician, male musician conversation.
I think that's part of it too.
Is that my brain just went blank for a second. I realize now that some of that hindered me being a lot more successful in the beginning of college.
Right.
And it also carried me into not feeling good enough when I left school. And so when I applied for a few churches to be their director of music, worship music leader, whatever, there was one church that did want me, and I honestly, there's days, and I don't believe in having regret, but there are days I regret. But I was like, no, I'm going to take my skill, I'm going to take all this stuff, and I'm going to go back home. And then back home, didn't necessarily always appreciate the things that I learned there.
Yeah.
And so
you were in this in between.
It took me a long time to figure out the confidence level, not just about myself, but on how to deal with musicians, because now at this point, my experience with male figures in that world have not been positive. And I've seen it also in other people not be positive. And so I know that I would waver and sometimes dummy down or listen to them versus them listening to me, because I just didn't want to have no problems.
Right.
But I'm also not that person now.
Thankfully.
And it is now, I left the rehearsal last night frustrated and then doubting myself a lot because the musician kept stopping me. He kept banging notes, as in indicating that I was teaching something incorrectly. And there was one time where I was giving the wrong note to the altos, but don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do it that
rude.
way. And it got to a point where I'm looking at some of the tenors' faces, and there's so much confusion and shock on their face. And I'm like, Miss Deborah, what's wrong? And she said, they're saying one thing over there. The musicians are like to my left and a little bit behind me, because they do rehearsal in the sanctuary part and not in the choir stand, because there's no seats in the choir stand right now. It's, it's more of a stage. Yeah. So we rehearse, in the seats. And I turn and I do admit I got a little snarky at this point, because now we're towards the end of rehearsal. And I said, okay, if there is an issue or something needs to be fixed, get my attention so that we are not causing confusion with the rest of the team. And he says, well, I mean, if that's how you want it, I said, I am changing certain things to make it easier for them. I understand what the record is doing, but you need to hear what I'm saying, follow what I'm doing. Well, if that's the way they're going to do it, then fine. Again, you didn't have to say any of that, at all. And it was, I got in the car because my mom was with me, and she was like, some of the things he was bing, 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 that were not even correct. Then in one song, he's like, oh, you want the major? Because most people don't play this song in the major anymore. They play in the minor. I said, I want it in the major. I want it exactly of what's familiar, because this is a song from like the 70s. That was like a big thing. Because what I did, I prayed about the set, and I found a mixture of old and new. And so this particular song is something that a lot of the people in that generation, like I barely had to teach that song. They were like, oh yeah, I had to fix a few notes, but they were like, that muscle memory from 1970, 80, 90s, that they've been singing this one song. Right. It's by Keith Pringle, called Call Him Up. It's a song that's been ingrained in their memory of church and music and things like that. And so why would I want to change what they know already to a minor chord that's not even how I'm used to it. And we had musician rehearsal before the women came. So we had this conversation of keeping it in the major. The organist even said to the MD person that, no, man, that's major, blah, 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 blah. He was like, oh, and he said it again. Oh, well, most people nowadays do it in the minor. And I said to him then, and the organist said to him, no, it needs to stay in the major. And I get like this particular band, though I went to this church when I was younger. I'm very connected to those people. I have come to do ministry things before. I've sang there. I have taught there before. I've done other things. I've done their youth choir before. And so I've been there, but this set of musicians are very new to me. They don't know me at all. And I don't feel like I have to walk in with telling you my credentials for you to have a mutual respect and understanding to do our jobs together so that we can make this service what it needs to be. I shouldn't have to.
No.
And so I was talking to my mom and I'm like, she's like, you're going to have to get there even earlier next week to deal with band rehearsal, and not just the band rehearsal, but have a conversation saying like this, and I'm like, I shouldn't have to do that. But I promise you, if it was a male guest director, it would have been a different conversation. It would have been a different thing. And I shouldn't have to say I have a degree in music. I do this, I do that. I'm a music teacher. Because when I walked in, because it's a different piano player that was there from the last week, I guess this is the guy who's actually the MD. And he goes, they're playing something, getting ready for Sunday. So I was like, whatever. He was like, oh, are you the director? He didn't say, hi, my name is. He didn't say, hey, what's your name? Nothing. And he goes, are you the director? I said, oh, yes, I am. He was like, okay, we can be done with this so we can work on your stuff. And that's how it started. And I'm like, okay. So we're going through the band rehearsal, going through the music, because I got their band rehearsal starts at 6, but because I get off at 6, I don't usually get there till 6:30. And next week I'm just going to leave work early so that I can be there at 6 for the band rehearsal. Because again, I was told be there at 7 originally for the rehearsal. Didn't know anything about band rehearsal. So that was like a whole communication situation that I didn't even know about, that I did not plan for.
Sing it with us, y'all. Communication is the key to our love.
Seriously.
Communication is the key to my love.
So, even in the band rehearsal, that same song where he's like, oh, the minor. Right. Then I'm like, okay, so now we're going to go to this next part. He tells me, oh, wait, I'm going to go do it again so that the bass player gets it. Again, don't have a problem. It's how it was said. Exactly. It was like ignoring the fact that I am there trying to direct you and tell you what I want. And then I know I'm me. I may not always do it exactly like the record. I may not always do it exactly how it was practiced. There may be a moment in the actual day in ministry where I may want to repeat something that we didn't repeat in rehearsal. So I'm going to need you to watch me and be able to trust me so that we can do this together. Because if you don't, then you're going to do your own thing and it's going to cause confusion.
See, that's the problem that I think I have with anybody who is not, to be a good leader, you got to be a good follower. And I say that the best leaders are the best followers, because I know you're the same way too, because we are people who have led for a long time. We have led in a lot of different avenues and venues. We know the importance of following well. And we are okay and confident enough in our skill, ability, who we are as women of God, and who we are as whatever it is that we're doing, to take a step back when we need to and follow somebody else's direction, because we know that that's important to do. If there is a lack of leadership, then we can step up, but that's going to be, you're going to have to push us and push us and push us and push us.
Right.
Like musicians or anybody for that matter, who decides that it's not being done the way they think it should be, so they're going to step up and fix it. That's not leadership. That's a power trip. And I've seen women do it, but I've seen men do it, and I've seen men do it with women a lot. And I don't understand
why. I don't get it. And you would think in 2022, and I think this is where my head is at too.
In the year of our Lord, 2022.
You would think that the understanding of that, taking it out of even the church, women's liberation, feminism, all these things. We're in this age where women are like, here we are. We're not going nowhere. Right. We're bosses. We're doctors. We're engineers. We are architects.
The vice president of the United States
literally is a woman. Yeah. It is, and that's not whether you agree with politics of the person or not. It is the fact that we are in a day and age where it is now. It should be, even though it's not always. Women in authority are a thing. It's like, we're here, get used to it. You know what I'm saying? Like we're not going anywhere. So in the church, it's even more disappointing because you feel like they should know better and do better, especially in certain
it's worse in
ministries.
the church.
And we've talked about this when it comes to preaching and things like that, but we haven't talked about it in the music world, because in the music world, it is like that. And I've seen it not just in the church, when I've done other gigs. The only time where I have not seen men belittle women in the music area is when I do classical to rock.
Yeah.
Every man that is in that situation are the most loving, and not just loving because they respect what we do. They respect.
Mm-hmm.
I only sing background for these people, and they treat us like we're the main artists. And that's from the top of the organization to every musician on that stage. That's the first time I've experienced it and it's a lot of men. The MD for classical to rock is a woman. One of my friends / big sisters, Jane Lee, who also runs the music company for the former Dodger, Kenley Jensen.
Get it?
She runs his music company. And so why is it in this area where it is literally Lincoln Park and Stone Temple? If the Stone Temple Pilots can respect me,
right,
and listen to suggestion, even I did. So because of classical to rock, I have built a relationship with Rob, who started Stone Temple Pilots, and he is an amazing person who will and has called on occasion for me to come to their Pasadena studio to do things. In those sessions on their last album, myself and RJ's sister Tiffany, we're doing all the vocals on the backgrounds. That's nice. That's us. If you listen to the Stone Temple Pilots last album that came out 2018,
why
2019.
Did you not tell me? Join Maleficent Simpson, for the love of God.
I thought I told you.
We're going to have a discussion later. Rude.
And when there were things that they wanted that didn't work, they came to me out of the booth and said, "Hey, Joy, what do you think if we do this? What do you think if we change this?" This is the dang on Stone Temple Pilots. Do you understand what I'm saying? These dudes have been rocking out since the 80s, you know what I'm saying? The 90s. And they're so genuine and kind people. I met them at the first Classical to Rock because they've performed on every single one. So when we did the last one right in 2019 at the Terranea Resort, it was like I had just finished working with them like 6 months before, and it was like, "Hey, what's up? How you doing? We can't wait to collaborate." These men respected what I did and who I was. I never had to say it. They just watched what we do. Same with Tramika. If she was in town during that time, she would have been on the album too, because they respected it. The guy, oh my gosh, we sang background for, is it Gary Wright?
Yeah.
He has a very popular song. Anyway, met us at the first Classical to Rock. Loved us, had us come do an event with him like a month later in Torrance at some big theater. That was an event for him. And his sister, who also sang background with us randomly that day, she's like, "My brother was telling me how amazing you guys are." This dude's been in the business since the 60s. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so how can I get this level of respect from men who have been in power and have been around the industry for such a long time, and then I go to a church rehearsal and I can't get you to just not plank a piano note and make me look bad in front of the choir?
Here's what I think it is. I think it's twofold. There are not a lot of, like you mentioned, there are not a lot of women in bands. There are a lot of women in choirs, and there are a lot of female vocalists, but traditional like musicians, trained or skilled female musicians in the church,
there's not many.
There are not a lot of us. Even at the church that I'm at now, which is a larger church, I mean, we're, several hundred, we've got a robust band and we're doing all this stuff. I am the only female instrumentalist.
Right.
And I play both guitar and keys.
And that's been something you've had forever.
The only times I've not been the only female instrumentalist on stage
Gary Wright, Dreamweaver. That's the song you would know. Dreamweaver.
Yes, Dreamweaver.
I had to,
yeah.
My mom was like, why didn't you tell me that Gary Wright was there? Because she like loves Dreamweaver, and she like was like, what? And so when he called my, not, this is so sorry, totally sorry how this happened.
We are going to digress
to rock
hard.
So my Aunt Rebecca, everybody knows I talk about my Aunt Rebecca. So her sister Mary's husband, his parents live next door to Rob from the Stone Temple Pilots and Palos Verdes.
Nice.
So he does stuff with them sometimes. So I'm on stage literally doing sound check, and I hear joy from like the balcony. I don't know. We're in a theater in like Palos Verdes at the time. And I'm like, who is calling me? He goes, it's Uncle Mike. So then everybody's really confused because there's this white man at the top of the thing.
I love it.
And I am on stage with Chester from Lincoln Park, God rest his soul, and the Stone Temple Pilots at the time. He's like, it's Uncle Mike. And I'm like, Uncle Mike? Like, what? So there's like this whole thing. So Uncle Mike, Rob gets a hold of Uncle Mike because Gary Wright wants to find out how to get those girls from the first event. So Rob calls my Uncle Mike. Uncle Mike calls me. I call Rob back and tell him, yeah, we'll do the job. So that was the first thing.
How funny.
So
your life is amazing.
No, it's
not. Girl, let's just stop for a second. I know we're talking about like dudes who can't hang, but let's talk about Joy's life for just a moment. No. Yes. No, we have to, because let me hype you up for a second. Hot second, girl. She sung with Stone Temple Pilots. She sung with Gary Weaver, or Gary Wright, Dreamweaver. And then she sang at Carnegie Hall, not just once, but twice, and was going to be a third time, but then thanks COVID, right?
No.
Or you said three times. 3 times at Carnegie Hall. She's done like world tours overseas. She's an author.
Guys, I'm literally just a regular person.
No, thank you, ma'am. No. Like, Joy's a bad mama jamma, and we stand. Like, that's how this works.
I had a brain fart. I was like, Dreamweaver. So go back to what you were saying.
No, we just need to take a little detour. Like, girl is legit. Like, so this is in full disclosure. So there was a period probably like, I don't know, a couple years ago. It was right when we first started like hanging out and like chatting again, and we'd had it was one of those things where life had just gotten in the way for a while, and then we kind of like reconnected after a few years. And I was seeing all this stuff that you were doing, and at the time I was, like, life was not life and well for me, and I was just like, no, man, I want to be Joy. How does she get to do all the cool stuff? I want to be Joy. And like, man. Yeah. So
I mean, I'll be honest, like,
it's dope. Allow yourself to say that it's dope.
God totally did a lot of that. If it wasn't for Tramika, I wouldn't have met a lot of the people that I met to do a lot of some of the things that I've done. I did the Winona Judd thing because of her. I've been on The Voice because of her. It's. I
need your full resume, ma'am, because there are pieces that I have missed, like The Voice, like that's still new to me. So on
The Voice, the first season, we sang background for Jermaine Paul, who was one of the 3 top finalists in the first season. He was on Team Blake, and so we sang background for him on the show.
You can join me going to YouTube and looking
that was actually, I've had some pretty cool experiences, I will say that. I mean, singing at Punky Brewster's dad's funeral, he was a titan in the music industry as well.
He was, yes.
Which I think the highlight of that day is I got to meet McSteamy from Grey's Anatomy, and I almost passed out. Like, I was already passing out because I met Punky Brewster, and if you know me, Punky Brewster was like a huge part of my childhood. Like, I love Punky Brewster. So I got to meet Punky Brewster and McSteamy in the same day. Like, what? At a funeral, of all things, where our opening song was "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog" in gospel arrangement because that's what he wanted.
Crying all the time.
We had to learn 5 songs in the van on the way to the funeral.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's fun.
And make harmonies to gospel harmonies on songs that had like, you ain't nothing but a hound dog. Like, what? It was the most random thing.
I need to hear a recording of this.
And we did, our ending was the hallelujah, hallelujah, as doves flew into the air.
That's legit.
Yeah.
Have you heard, sorry, this is again, total.
I'm sorry.
Have you heard Postmodern
This is
Jukebox?
not what this is about today. What did you say?
Postmodern Jukebox.
No.
Oh, you got to look up Postmodern Jukebox. They have everybody's got an arrangement of Hallelujah, but
That is true.
they just put a new one out probably 8 months or so ago. And the woman who sings on it, gorgeous voice. I mean, it is easily one of the prettiest arrangements of this song. Like, her power is amazing. But what they do is they take modern songs and they put them in, like, they make them sound like old jazz standards or like ragtime or kind of all that kind of stuff. It's really dope. Take a look. Scott Bradley's Postmodern Jukebox.
Gonna have to look that up.
YouTube.
That was a large digression, you guys. I'm really trying to go back to what we were talking about because I am like, oh my gosh, I'm low key blushing right now. I don't think of any of that as being. I literally only brought it up to show the dynamics of.
But I think it speaks a lot to it because here's the sad reality, and I've been reading a lot. I made the mistake of like, what's Twitter like now that Elon owns it? And I never
that's been a whole thing.
That's a whole thing. I always regret going on Twitter, and I still always regret going on Twitter. Like, I go on there and then I get all amped up and I leave. But my Twitter has become kind of filled with women who have, and I'm not sure if I'm characterizing this, women who have suffered abuse in the church, who have suffered abuse at the hands of particularly complementarian teaching leaning churches and pastors, and who have either left the church or deconstructed in a healthy way, and talk a lot about what that looks like. And so my feed is a lot of these women and things that they will retweet or all that kind of stuff. And then, like, Savannah Bananas videos. So got to keep it real on Twitter. That's keeps me saying. But the thing that I have begun to kind of get a sense around, in a general sense around, the other thing that's in my feed a lot is I see a lot of people talking about like the SBC and Southern Baptist Church. And not to rail against the SBC, but to rail against the SBC. Let's talk about it for real, because they're very strong. Right now, the big push is they want to get rid of Saddleback Church out there in California. They want to kick them out of the denomination because they ordained women. And because,
I would say kick me out at this point.
They need him a lot more than Saddleback needs the SBC.
Exactly.
And so, but all that to say is, they are drawing these lines in the sand about women in ministry and women in leadership. And it really speaks to this mentality about how they view women in general, right? That women are second class, that they are not as important as men, that they are not as valuable, that their only value lies in how they can make life easier and better for the men. And I'm sorry, but that is not what Scripture teaches. That is not what Scripture says. And so when you have a system, and I think except for the past few years, this has been the predominant and prevailing mindset in most churches. Even in churches like that have a strong tradition of female leadership, there is still this idea of women serve a purpose, that is to make life better for men. And that's not what Jesus did. Jesus elevated the role of women time and time again.
He did.
Even Paul, who, a lot of people point to and say, well, Paul said women shouldn't be in ministry. First off, let's read the whole passage in its context and let's understand that. But that's another story entirely.
That's a whole nother story for a whole nother day.
Paul routinely calls out the faithful women that he worked alongside.
Yes, he does.
And he respected their leadership. He respected what they did for the body of Christ. He respected who they were as much loved daughters of God. And yes, it was informed by his culture and by, the time that he lived in. So it wasn't up to our standards of equality and all that kind of stuff. However, it was groundbreaking and life-changing in its time. And so we have to give it credit for what it was. You know, you can't make all the progress at once, right? It has to come over time. And now we're in this season, I think, where particularly in the church, there's going to be a reckoning, because for so many years, women have quietly been leading and doing all of the heavy lifting in churches. And I'm going to be real frank.
From the beginning of time. Like,
But let's be like, I don't know a time growing up when it's not really, things have not happened in a church because of the women in the church. And so, but to say, oh, you can't be upfront about it. You can make things happen in the back, but we can't see you doing that work. Right. Women should be heard or should be like seen and not heard. And it's like, that's not what Jesus said. But that mindset is so prevalent that no wonder it's that way in music when you translate it over into music in the church, because there are so few of us represented. Because why would we be? If we're disrespected and treated as second class, then we're going to go find secular land to do our work in, because we're going to get treated better there.
Right. I mean, even in the instance, at work, and I have two things I'm going to comment on. Even in the instance at work with the male teacher, this all started because when we have over a certain number of kids in a class, because I'll teach from 3 to 4 classes a day, depending on the numbers or whatever. So at that time, I was working with the second and third graders, and usually my second and third grade class are over like 26 to 28 kids. So anything over 20, I have to have another teacher in the room. His job was literally only to be an adult in the room. I don't ever have a problem running my classes. Now, I'm not saying that I don't need help at times. I'm not saying that I'm not willing to accept help, but there is a time and a place. So in this instance, I'm teaching theater and music. We are getting ready for our Christmas production. It is November. We have a week off. So I had this week rehearsal, last week's rehearsal. We only have a few more rehearsals before the show. So this is how ridiculous it is that you can't take instruction from me. Is that one of the kids was telling me, Miss Joy, that such and such is part. Now, mind you, I have a book that I have everybody's part written down, who is doing what. And I have some kids are doing the same lines. Okay. So he's like, no, Miss Joy, that's such and such's part. And I'm like, no. I'll say, Eric, that is not such and such's part. That is such and such else's part. And he's like, no, because blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no. So the teacher says, the male teacher in the room, who's only supposed to be sitting there and monitoring, unless I say, hey, can you deal with this? Goes, hey, Eric, I feel you, man. He does this. I feel you, man. But just listen to what she says. Excuse me? So I look at him and I said, no, Mr. I'll just say T for now. He is incorrect. And you are incorrect for telling them that he is correct. And I said it just like that. He walks out of the auditorium. Unbeknownst to me, goes to my supervisor and complains about me to my supervisor and tells him that I was belittling a child and that I dismissed him.
No,
what?
You corrected an incorrect statement.
That's literally all I did. So, because this was now not the first time something like this has happened, where even I'm dismissing kids to go with their teachers on Fridays, we have assembly. And I'm dismissing kids to go with their teachers. And one group, I'm telling them, when I say stand up, stand up does not mean run and go where I tell you to go.
Right.
I say, such and such's group is going to go line up at the back door. Such and such stand up. They stand up and they start zooming off. I said, I did not say zoom off, because that teaches us how to listen. It wasn't that I was trying to be like, I didn't say go, so you don't go. That wasn't it. They know that if I say it's time to clean up does not mean go to the door. It means clean up your desk, sit there until I tell you to go line up. So when it's things like that. So I say that to them. He goes to one of the little girls that I had just corrected for running off. You know what? It's okay. You know, I understand that you were excited to just go line up and do whatever, but you know, you just have to listen to what Miss Joy is saying, because she didn't tell you to go to the door yet. You don't have to mansplain for me. So this was like, at this point,
For real.
the fifth thing since this dude has started. He's only worked for us for like a month and a change. And I guess where he came from, he went through 5 different supervisors in one school year. And so he's used to cleaning things up, as he says, and he was not trained properly. But from the first day, my supervisor said, Joy is literally the assistant director. She's me, not even when I'm not here, but when I'm here. If you can't get me and you can't deal with the student, you take her to me. So I go to him very innocently, very calmly, and I had the supervisor in the room. I said, I really need to have this discussion so it does not keep happening, because now it's happened at least 4 or 5 times. Like even interrupting me in theater class going, hey, you guys be quiet. I don't need you to do that. I deal with my classes the way I deal with them. Now, if there is something that needs to be fixed or you felt that I did wrong, and this is what I said to him, talk to me offline. Don't do it in front of the kids.
Yeah, that seems.
Do not do it in front of the kids. And then that was my biggest problem. So I used the word mansplain, and he was like, what? Huh? What is that? What is that? And I'm like, so my boss explains to him what mansplaining is. And he went into a whole like thing. And the reality is he misunderstood this moment with the student Eric and did not realize that Eric was trying to tell me what to do, and he was incorrect. He was like, oh, I just thought it took us an hour for that to sink into him, that I wasn't belittling this child. I wasn't dismissing this child. He was like, you know, and I was him when I was a kid, and people dismissed me and didn't understand. I said, but you can't project your stuff onto what I'm doing with the kids. I said, I may have a harsher tone. I may sound a little differently. I am not a gentle teacher. And it isn't because I don't love my kids. It isn't because or whatever. I just know and I told him, I said, I've known most of these kids since they were 4. Because these were, at this time, I think it was actually the 4th graders that I was talking to, not the 2nd and 3rd graders. It was the 4th graders. Most of them I've had since they were in TK kindergarten, who have been in shows with me, who know how things go. And this particular child I have had since kindergarten. So I said, you are bringing in a perspective that isn't accurate of what's happening. And I ended up staying almost an hour after work dealing with that. And then I left the meeting, and he was at the school with my boss until 8:30, still talking about things, because he had went into this whole like whatever. And I'm just like, and I told him, I said, and this is the same thing I had with the musicians last night. If there is an issue, if something needs to be fixed, pull me to the side. Don't do it in front of them, because that to me throws off the authority that I have in telling them what to do.
It sets a bad
I was hired.
Yeah.
Right. And in this instance with the choir, I was hired by the pastor for this event. Right. They need to trust that I know what I'm doing. With you undermining me does not help them put their trust in what I'm doing, because now it looks like I didn't prepare, when that is not the case.
Right.
It's okay to get a note wrong. That's what musicians and teachers are there for. I told the choir last night, when in doubt, sing out. Now, if it's that Sunday and you're in doubt, hold it in.
Right.
But in rehearsal, when in doubt, sing it out. You know, and they laughed or whatever. And then he's frustrated because I'm going over some of the same notes over and over. Well, some of them weren't getting it. Again, a lot of them are silver saints.
Right.
Was it optimal use of an hour's time? No. When I had 2 songs to teach, no. Did I like necessarily having to go over the first 3 lines of the song for literally almost 30 minutes? Absolutely not. But did I show that to them? No. But you did. Mm-hmm. By sighing and rolling your eyes. And And just because you don't know me, and here's the second thing I was going to say. A lot of, especially women in I don't know if it's just African American church or what the churches period, a lot of them were not degreed women. Right. They just grew up directing, grew up teaching, grew up singing, grew up whatever. Right. And so I think, again, that's something that they're also used to. But I shouldn't have to come in saying I am blah, blah, blah. And so respect me because I know what I'm doing. Just know because I was hired to do the job, I know what I'm doing. Period. Mm-hmm. This particular pastor, trust me, wouldn't hire me if she didn't think I was going to get the job done. Trust me. And right. Yeah. And I'm just going to be quiet on the rest of that part. Jessica knows personally some of the other things that have happened with this. Yeah. But that's not what we're talking about today.
Yeah. It's this idea that like, I shouldn't have to show up with a resume. Like mm-hmm. in an environment, if that shows that he doesn't trust his leadership. And I suspect he's the MD, but he thinks that he should be doing all of those things. You know, there is maybe a little bit of insecurity
in the relationship between the MD and whoever's doing whatever, whether it's choir, whether it's worship, that has to be so cohesive. The only other time I really had that in church is when I worked in Huntington Beach, and I worked with a young man named Gabe. Now, the other musicians, they were, are you sure? Constantly questioning me. But once he was hired, he flowed. And so there were times where something didn't work or did work and we wouldn't agree, but it wasn't in front of the band.
Right.
It was offline. It was on the phone or in emails. And we came to a mutual understanding. And we have to do better. Like, I had to tell them, I in my mind, I'm like, if I was a man, honestly, and I'm not trying to be some female martyr, if I was a dude, if I was a male in leadership in this moment, they wouldn't have done what they did to me. Mm-hmm. If the same with the teacher, if I was a man, if I was my boss, he wouldn't try to call my boss's boss about him and how he spoke loudly to a child. It wouldn't be none of that. It would be none of that. And I even told my students yesterday, I said, you guys don't do this with any of the male teachers. Why do you do it to me? But I'm the one who clean up your messes. I'm the one who's always there when you need a hug. I'm the one who's always, and I didn't say this to them, but I'm thinking it like, what? So then I went from that at work to this in rehearsal. And I'm not going to lie. I know I'm the confidence girl and all of that now, but my confidence was so shaken last night.
Oh, I can't imagine how it would have been.
And rehearsal. My confidence as a teacher, as a musician, as a vocalist, as all of that was so shaken. Only for the fact that the women after rehearsal were like, thank you so much for working with us. We know that it's a lot. One of the women that's over the women's ministry or whatever, she's like, I'm so excited about what we have going on. Just be patient with us. And I haven't fussed at them. I haven't snapped at them. I haven't said, no. Like, I didn't do any of that. I'm like, okay, let's fix it. You know, when I hear something wrong, because that's what you do. But I was a little shaken, and I texted a friend and they were like, shake it off and start fresh next week.
Yeah.
And so now I have to go in with a different mindset and a different conversation, and maybe a little bit of a different tone with the band specifically. Because I don't want to, next week is the last rehearsal for this particular thing. And I want to stop experiencing it anywhere. This isn't the first church it's happened to me in. Right. It's happened at my own church before. It's happened at other church ministries I've worked in. It's happened at ministries I've subbed in. I subbed for a church for a little while until they got their permanent person. And it wasn't even just the men in the band. It was the men in the choir and on the praise team constantly questioning me and undermining and going to the pastor about something they didn't like instead of talking to me.
Well, and because
you have to think, am I the drama? Is it me? Like, you know, that TikTok sound like, is it me? Am I the drama? It feels like that sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
I get why Beyonce a few years ago started with she did a female band for her tour. I get it. Because how are you going to be the boss and then you have people undermining you? Because I can only imagine, even if she is Queen Bee or whatever people want to call her, whatever, even if she is who she is, I can still imagine that the men were still being men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So she was like, I'm going to fix this. I mean, every person in the band was a female.
Which, yeah, was probably dope as heck, man.
It really was. They sounded really great.
I'm sure.
I literally, I can see a performance that they did on like Good Morning America or something like this was years ago too.
Yeah.
And I literally remember that performance because one of the drummers, she had like this big afro and like she had female saxophone players, which you don't see that often. She had, everything. And, it's frustrating. And as you can see, I'm a little frustrated. And this was something we had talking about for a while. This has been on our schedule of topics for a minute. And because I just had this experience, Jess was like, it's fresh. Let's talk about it. Men do better. It's not that I can't follow you. It's not that I just feel like there's a time and a place for certain things. And if I am the one in charge for this moment, yes, I know how to lead and I know how to listen and I know how to take correction. It's just when and how it's done.
Right. Well, and let me say this, that passage in scripture that's like, wives, submit to your husbands. First off,
oh yeah,
it's a very specific thing.
So many arguments about that.
Right. But let's talk about that word actually means cooperate.
Right.
Cooperate with your husbands. And that's, first off, you're not married to any of those men. So what? Second of all, cooperate, work together. That's what we're supposed to do. Work together. Like, so why trying to make it, like, why are they trying to make it some kind of way? Like, just let it go. It's interesting. So tonight, as you talk about you doing that women thing, we have a women's night at our church. Mm-hmm. And I got to leave here. And then, so here's the rest of my crazy day. I have to leave here, change my guitar strings actually before I leave because they are desperately in need of it. And that's going to be an adventure because I suck at changing the strings. It takes forever. And then I got to go. I'm filling in for my dad. Long story. I'm filling in for my dad, who is their interim or like filling in for his church because they are without a worship leader right now. Mm-hmm. And he had to go back out to California. So he's in California right now. And so I'm filling in for him. And this is a church that I think wants to hire me to at least be their interim. And I don't want to for many reasons. So if the Lord wants me there, he's going to have to like change my heart. And one of the main reasons is it's an SBC church. And I don't flow with that. Right. I have problems with that from the top down. Now, I don't think this particular pastor has any kind of problem or anything like that. Like I think he's a great guy, but just, I have a problem with that. And so but it's our band tonight. All of the vocalists are women. And, but because of the way our band is structured, I'm still the only female instrumentalist because we have all male instrumentalists in the back. Right. So we will have some testosterone flowing on the back of the stage. But it's really funny on Sunday mornings. If I'm on keys, it's like, dude, Jess. Like, it's just really funny.
Yeah.
And you know what? And they have all been great. Sometimes. But they have all been great. And so I appreciate that. Of course, I'm not in any kind of leadership situation there, so it's a little bit different, but it's just an interesting scenario. I think because we are women in church leadership in particular, we have experiences of being the only women in the room or one of a couple of women in the room. Right. And having to navigate what that looks like. And it's tough. Right. Because, we're always accused of being too much. We're always accused of being too loud, of being too opinionated, all this kind of stuff. And the reality is we're not too loud. We're not too opinionated. We are appropriately loud and appropriately opinionated. And we should have opinions because we're in the room for a reason. Right. And we're always, I think women are constantly expected to moderate our tone and to moderate how we say something. Right. And for better. Right. And guys are not. And we're just expected to be like, oh, well, they're just guys. They don't know how to do X and Y. No, I'm sorry. Like, to be fair, there is some of that. But
right.
where you can tell where a dude is being just a doofus versus being a douche, right? There's sometimes where guys are like, just, they stumble over the words or they say things backwards and you go, was that really what you meant? He's like, no.
Right.
Versus I think all my ish doesn't stink kind of thing, you know? So it's like, we have all this practice of being the only woman in the room. We have this practice of moderating what we say and taking a step back. And it's only when we don't do those things that the guys seem to get all butthurt about it. And it's like, I'm not like super feminist girl. I don't care, but I've worked hard and I want to be respected for what I've done. You know, it was so I don't think I told you this. So I still get, you know, I'm on all the lists for church jobs. And I got an email from one of the job boards. It says, you've been invited to apply for this job. And I was like, I've been invited to apply for this job because my resume's uploaded. They saw it, all that kind of stuff. And so I was invited to apply for this job. It was a lead pastor position. So I took a look at the church. Now, it was in, I think it was Wisconsin. So I was like, well, that's not going to work for us because we're just getting established here in Georgia. That's not
right.
So, but I looked at the job description. I was like, oh, I wonder why I was invited to apply. Let's see what they think how it matches up. The first qualification, what do you think it was?
I don't know.
Must be a man. That was the very first qualification. Must be a man. And I'm laughing. I'm like, why did you send me this email? Like, this is how male driven, especially our industry is of church work. And it's frustrating and it's sad because I had all the qualifications except one. I was qualified to do that job, except I don't have a penis.
And for whatever reason, that disqualifies us for a lot of things. And I have worked with a lot of women. I mean, I've had women choir directors a lot of my life, female worship leaders, but I've also seen some of them have to be hard because of, I believe, some of the experiences they had growing up, because you can imagine in 80s, 90s, how it was for, you know, women or whatever, or 90s, early 2000s, you know. And so, you know, even with the teacher, I literally seen him yell in a kid's face, but he got upset because he thought I dismissed the kid by correcting him.
It's okay when
literally
he does it.
In his face like this. Like, have you ever seen Major Payne, that movie with Damon Wayans?
Yes.
And you know, he used to get in his in the kids' faces with, you know, like and he would do his whole like sergeant thing. That's how he was yelling in the kid's face at the bathroom area. And I had an issue with that. And being one of his bosses, I went to my boss and said, you need to talk to him on how to talk to the kids. Now, again, I don't do gentle teaching, but I think there's sometimes where yelling is not quite necessary, especially like barking at a kid. Like, I hear him the most barking at students, but you have a problem with my teaching. It's because I'm a woman. And I kind of overheard a conversation. He's dealing with issues with his mom and things like that. So I don't know if I remind him of his mama or what, but here's the thing. Men, we are not your mothers, whatever your experience with your parents are. We are not the other women who have, taken their position and try to belittle you, because there are women who do get in position, whether it's ministry or otherwise, who try to belittle men because they have to prove they're the boss. Every female is not like that. My thing is this, and whether it's in ministry, especially in music ministry, get to know who you're working with, even if it's for a limited time, so that you do not treat everyone the same as the person before, because we are not all the same. I don't know what these men experiences have been with women in position. The pastor of the church is a woman.
Right.
So what is the problem? What is the problem? But I've had the experience not just with them. Jessica has had the experience in several different areas of ministry, not just with the band, but when it comes to a worship situation and a choir director situation, that relationship between you and the MD and you and the band is highly important. So when there is not mutual respect and understanding, it blows up, and it blows up badly. I've seen it. It's you can tell I'm still a little frustrated because I'm like,
well, it's frustrating. It is frustrating because you've earned the right to be there. You've earned the right to be in the space and to do the thing. And the fact that your years of knowledge and skill and training don't really matter because they're accompanied by a female body is stupid. It's stupid.
And literally, we could go on for days on this topic.
Right. All that to say, it's annoying. Stop it.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's it. If you have a story of when you have been either the only woman in the room or you have had someone tell us your best mansplaining stories.
Right.
You know, and guys, if you've known a mansplainer, why? Ask them why they choose to mansplain, and then tell us. We need someone to do some recon for us to understand the male psyche as to why it's a thing. Like, why are you threatened? Like, we're just working together. Like, don't be threatened. We got this. You got this.
It's
if you are capable,
we are still second-class citizens in most industries, including the church.
Yep. Oh, especially the church. It's the worst in the church. But all that to say, we keep going back to it because it's a very annoying thing. But yeah, let us know. Tell us your stories. Be a part of the conversation. You can hit us up at joyandjess.com. That's JoyandJess.com. You can send us an email at podcast@joyandjess.com, or you can find us on Instagram at We Digress with Joy_Jess. But send us a message. And on our website, you can send us a voice message and just be a part of the conversation. We want to hear your experiences, and we want to chat about it too, because, it's a fairly universal thing. And also, we also want to hear, like, if you've had an amazing experience working with a dude and who it has just worked out amazing, share that. We want to hype up the guys who are doing it right. Because we believe in positive affirmation of all the good stuff. That's how we do things here.
Absolutely.
But that's going to wrap it up for us. We hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll catch y'all later.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Check us out on the web at joyandjess.com. That's JoyandJess.com. We'll see you next week.